There's something raw and undeniably magnetic about flawed, imperfect protagonists, especially when they're young and faced with insane, often grotesque challenges. Today, we're diving deep into two of the most fascinating imperfect heroes in anime, Yuji Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen and Denji from Chainsaw Man. They're both characters who don't fit the typical hero mold, yet their humanity, or maybe lack thereof in certain moments, is exactly what makes us connect with them. What really stands out about these two isn't their superhuman abilities or the high-stakes battles they face, but the way they embody a much more grounded, relatable set of struggles. They're raw, often stumbling through their newfound responsibilities, and sometimes motivated by desires or goals that seem shallow or questionable. Let's break down how Yuji and Denji are two sides of the same coin when it comes to portraying a new wave of anime heroes. Yuji Itadori's journey starts as a kid who's freakishly strong and good-hearted. In Jujutsu Kaisen, we see him as someone who wants to make the most of his life and help people, but that desire isn't rooted in some idealistic vision. His life motto, as his grandfather put it, is simply to help others, and that's where Yuji's journey really kicks off. But here's the twist. Yuji's decision to swallow Sukuna's finger and take on the curse himself isn't because he feels he's a great hero. It's a split-second decision that turns his entire world upside down. What makes Yuji interesting is that his struggle becomes so much more than just about saving people. As he's drawn deeper into the world of curses, he faces these intense moments where he questions what saving people actually means. It's a philosophy that's constantly challenged, especially as he starts seeing the darker sides of humanity and the painful consequences of his decisions. Remember that episode where he meets Junpei? Yuji tries so hard to save him, even connecting with him on an emotional level. But Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't shy away from making us, and Yuji, understand that sometimes good intentions aren't enough. Junpei's tragic fate is a huge wake-up call for Yuji. He realizes that saving people isn't always possible, and sometimes he might even be a cause of others' suffering. Yuji's motivations also highlight a darker, more vulnerable side of heroism that we don't often see in anime protagonists. He isn't constantly spouting off about justice or grand ideals. He's simply trying to avoid a meaningless death. That's what makes Yuji's character feel grounded. He doesn't want to become another cog in a system, and he doesn't believe in sacrificing others for the greater good. So, every time he's forced to confront the possibility of his own death, there's this haunting sense of tragedy. Yuji knows he's got an expiration date with Sukuna living inside him, but he's still out there fighting, trying to make his limited time count. Now, let's pivot to Denji from Chainsaw Man, a protagonist who might seem like the polar opposite of Yuji at first glance. Denji's world is brutal from the start. Growing up in crippling debt with barely any family or support, Denji is forced to fight devils to pay off his father's debts. It's a life of constant hunger and deprivation, and it's probably one of the bleakest origin stories you'll find in shonen anime. Unlike Yuji, Denji's motivations are rooted in something way more primal: survival. He doesn't care about grand philosophies or noble causes. His goals are straightforward, even mundane. He wants food, a warm bed, and maybe a chance to be close to someone. When Denji becomes a devil hunter, he's not out to save the world or prove his worth. He just wants a decent life, which sounds ridiculously low stakes compared to most anime protagonists. But that's what makes him feel so raw and human. Chainsaw Man doesn't shy away from showing us how rough Denji's life is, and we can't blame him for wanting simple pleasures when he's never had a taste of them before. His motivations, however, don't stay that simple. As he gets deeper into this chaotic, dangerous world, he realizes that his goals, while valid, won't protect him from the horrors he faces. One of Denji's defining moments is his relationship with Makima, which highlights his vulnerability and the desperation for a connection. He's constantly manipulated, pulled into battles that test his limits, yet his desires don't fade. Instead, they start to evolve. Denji's story takes the traditional rags-to-riches narrative and subverts it. Rather than turning him into a hero who transcends his past, his experiences often bring him back to the same desires he had at the beginning. The difference is, by now, he's been beaten down, betrayed, and manipulated to the point where he's had to let go of some of his innocence. So how do these two protagonists compare? Yuji and Denji are both heroes whose actions are motivated more by personal values than by societal ideals. Yuji's story in Jujutsu Kaisen is about making a meaningful impact in a world that doesn't always reward kindness, while Denji's story in Chainsaw Man is about finding his own worth in a world that's only given him cruelty. In a way, they're two sides of the same coin, both asking us to consider what heroism means in a world that isn't black and white. The most compelling thing about these characters is that they're allowed to make mistakes and aren't idealized. Yuji's desire to save everyone, while admirable, often leads him into painful, traumatic situations that force him to question his path. Denji's simpler motivations, on the other hand, often leave him exploited and vulnerable. But both characters show us that heroism isn't always about achieving grand goals or fighting for abstract values. Sometimes it's about enduring the harshness of life and trying to find your way through it. The beauty of these stories lies in their authenticity. Yuji and Denji don't become traditional heroes who fight for justice. Instead, they're relatable precisely because they don't have all the answers. They're driven by the same fears, desires, and questions that we all have. When Yuji questions his purpose or Denji feels torn between his desires and responsibilities, it's not just another plot twist. It's a reflection of the human struggle to find meaning in chaos. Characters like Yuji and Denji are part of a shift in modern anime that challenges our expectations. They don't aspire to be perfect. They're messy, human, and flawed. They don't always win, and when they lose, the cost is high. But that's why they resonate with us. In a way, they're breaking the mold of the ideal hero and showing us a version of heroism that's raw and genuine. Yuji and Denji have brought something refreshing to anime. A hero who can be both selfish and selfless, both strong and vulnerable. Their journeys aren't just about fighting monsters or exorcising curses. They're about coming to terms with who they are and what they're willing to fight for. And in a world that's increasingly complex, maybe that's the kind of hero we need. Someone who's figuring it out, just like us. So whether it's Yuji fighting to protect the people around him or Denji fighting for a chance at a better life, these characters remind us that sometimes the greatest battles aren't against the villains but against the struggles within. And maybe that's what makes them real heroes after all.